Very good evening, friends. Meeting again in the session of Kant's philosophy, and we have started discussing about chapter number 17, the science and the art. In this chapter, he starts with dealing with the practical part of Organon of medicine. And specifically for the fourth year, the syllabus is covered right from aphorism number 71 to 81. That is the classification of the diseases. There are three questions aroused by Hahnemann in this specific practical part of organ. The first question relates with the study of diseases in general as well as in particular. So classification of diseases along with the case taking that belongs to aphorism number 71 to 81, 71 to a 104. Then second question, in order to treat the patients, what needs is the medicines. And knowledge of medicines, the building of materia medica, the drug proving, all those aspects are explained from aphorism 105 to 145. So that is the answer of a second question aroused by Hahnemann. And last question, how to apply these both knowledges to each other. It starts right from aphorism 146 onwards to the 291, which relates with the most practical part of the organ of medicine. After explaining this, he started explaining about the classification of disease. That is the first part of this question. And while discussing that, the diseases are basically classified into two types. First variety, where the cause is external, called as adynamic diseases. And where the cause is internal are called as dynamic diseases. When some accident has happened, when there is an external trauma, when some poison is consumed by mistake, all those diseases are because of external sources, and that's why Hahnemann labels them as adynamic disorders. But where the vital force is in fault, vital energy is disturbed, the vital principle is disturbed, primarily, the causes are internal, invisible, to which Hahnemann labeled by the name of dynamic diseases. And out of those dynamic diseases, they are further classified into basically two varieties, the acute diseases and the chronic diseases. We have finished up to this paragraph, that is page number 141 in my book. The second paragraph we have finished. We have to start with next one. An acute miasm is one that comes upon the economy, passes through its regular prodromal period, longer or shorter, and has its period of progress and period of decline, and in which there is tendency to recovery. A chronic miasm is one that has its period of prodrome, period of progress, but no period of decline. It is continuous, never ending, except with the death of the patient. So, see what he is explaining. There are two varieties of diseases which you are going to see over there. First is acute. And acute, there are four varieties. First type is called as individual. Second is called as disorder caused because of environmental problems. Third variety called as epidemic or endemic. And fourth is endemic. Out of which the first two relates with the susceptibility of the human being, And last two relates with the acute miasms. Hahnemann have labeled name acute miasm when he doesn't have any microscope to label the causes, but he has mentioned over there acute miasms are nothing but the some invisible creatures which are responsible to produce disease, but they are not visible to naked eyes. They are the causes which transmits from one person to another person, and to which he has utilized the word acute miasm. It was his study, understanding, going into the depth of the disorder, and 50 years prior to the Robert Koch's discovery of coma bacillus, Hahnemann explained that cholera is caused by some small creatures which remains hidden on the shipboats wherever there is a proper environment for their development, and they remains in colonies and creates the disorder. Hahnemann labeled to such disorders which are caused because of such things acute miasms. And acute miasms has three important things. The period of prodrome. Period of prodrome means where it starts and starts developing. Then it goes up in the curve. It goes up. That is called as period of progress. And then this ends with the cure or recovery. Very occasionally, one of the case goes into the complication and death is possible. Otherwise, acute diseases have period of prodrome, the period of progress, and period of decline. As compared to the acute diseases, he has explained that chronic diseases are caused because of chronic miasms. And where you will get one important difference. They are the diseases where there is period of prodrome is present, there is a period of progress is present, but the period of decline is not there. The disease is continuous and it ends with the life of the human being, those he termed by the name of chronic diseases. So, first important difference is acute and chronic, which he explains over there, and then he starts explaining about the acutes variety. The acute diseases need much less study than the chronic. They are all such as are contagious or infectious, such as have a miasmatic character and are capable of running a definite course. When man disorders his stomach and has an attack of vomiting, and from which he has no after trouble, he has suffered merely from an indisposition. So first variety, which is called as individual or indisposition, are caused because of some exciting cause. Patient consumes a lot of food, lot of spicy food, and next day he gets an acid peptic trouble, or he gets vomiting, he gets diarrhea. That is because of slight alteration in the diet which has happened, and such variety of disorder is called as indisposition. Indisposition of a mild character never requires any medicine to treat. It recovers by itself. There is no need to treat it by any means. Such conditions from external causes are not miasms. Things that go through the mouth into the stomach and thereby produce sickness acts either as rousers up of some old trouble or as mechanical causes of disturbance. So here the cause is external in the form of some material enters inside the body, in the form of a food, in the form of something causing a trouble. These are not miasmatic causes. The pure diseases, on the other hand, whether acquired or inherited, are those that flow from the innermost to outermost while making the man sick. These causes that make the man sick are influx of simple substance, and they run a fixed, distinct course. Each one has its own time of prodrome, its own period of progress, and whereby the traditional school of medicine has fixed what it calls as pathognomic symptoms. It is well to know these symptoms not for the purpose of naming merely, but for the purpose of association. So there are other variety of diseases where there is a there is a period of prodrome, there is a period of progress, and there is a period of decline. These are the diseases where you get a pathognomic symptoms. Symptoms which denotes the pathology, labels the pathology. Those are the symptoms which are common to the pathology, are called as pathognomic symptoms. These symptoms are important for the purpose of diagnosis. These symptoms are useful for the diagnostician in order to understand from what the patient is suffering from. These are important for the purpose of understanding diagnosis and considering the prognosis of the patient. But these are the symptoms which are not useful for homeopath for the prescribing point of view. They are not characteristic enough to define an individual. And that's why they are not the symptoms which will individualize the case. The study of disease should not be for the purpose of naming. If it is so, the name does harm. So in homeopathy, when we deal, we never labels the disease. Yes, I am treating the schizophrenia and this is the remedy for schizophrenia. No, every individual is different. Every schizophrenic patient presents it in a different manner. And that's why we cannot label a remedy for the disorder. We label a remedy for the patient. Whether he is having schizophrenia, whether he is having physical disorder, whether he is having any pathological disorder, remedy is individualistic and that remedy will cover whatever it may be. So, naming the disease and considering the remedy on the basis of that name of the disease does the harm. This is what Kent says, and it is right. Then you become prejudiced. And once you become prejudiced, your results becomes poor. When you think of child suffering from measles, the idea of measles may go out of mind. But the character of the sickness of that particular child must remain in the mind. So if you are treating the measles, you should not think that you are giving a measles belladonna. No. If the child presents it belladonna, it's a belladonna remedy. If child presents it pulsatilla, it's pulsatilla. If child presents it as an aconite, it might be aconite. It varies. It varies from individual to individual. So we must miss what we are treating. We must think what patient is presenting. At first, you will not be able to see what is meant by that, especially if you have been in the habit of studying cases for the purpose of diagnosis. If you make a habit of making a diagnosis, you may be trapped in that diagnosis and remedy. But because of which, it becomes rather difficult and to reach to the right remedy. Instead of that, better be unprejudiced. Give importance to the totality, what patient is presenting. Give importance to the characteristic totality, what patient is presenting, with which you can find it out a right remedy and apply that remedy. It doesn't matter whether that remedy covers the measles or not. Then further he says, I do not say this to throw a cloud upon diagnosis, but to show that study of diagnosis is not for the purpose of making a prescription. Very important thing which he is defining, that purpose of diagnosis in homeopathy is not for making a prescription. The more you dwell upon diagnostic symptoms, the more you will be beclouded or becloud the ideas of entering the mind that lead towards the prescription. That lead towards the prescription. So see, this is very important thing. If you go on doing the diagnosis and finding it out a remedy on the basis of that, every time that remedy will strike to your mind. You might go into the room and work an hour individualizing a case, deciding whether it were measles or scarlet fever. There are some confusing cases in the beginning. Well, you might say it's measles and now have pulsatilla or scarlet fever and must have belladonna. You will really see that such state of affairs is misleading of the mind. See what he is saying. If you are labeling the disease name and considering the remedy, it creates a problem for you. Patient will not get a right remedy and it will do a harm. It will not give a result to the patient. If you are in an epidemic where it is necessary to, in order to save the neighborhood, to know, for instance, whether a certain case is of cholera or not, then it becomes necessary to do the two things. The family and surrounding families are entitled to the safety that correct knowledge would give and that protection, isolation, and quarantine would afford. There are two kinds of study. One with the bearing towards the classification that the disease belongs to, and the one with reference to the remedy that the patient needs. But I prefer to settle the patient first as to the remedy he needs, and this has very little to do with the classification except the general way. What he is telling is very important. There are two purposes behind doing diagnosis. First is that if you diagnose and if your patient is suffering from cholera, it is necessary to understand because cholera is a very fast spreading disorder. You have to make that patient quarantine. You have to remove the rest of the peoples from the house to the another area. They should not use the same utensils which are used by the same patient. All those measures depends upon the name diagnosis. But your prescription never depends upon the name of cholera. Patient might require arsenic album. Patient might require camphora. Patient might require veratrum album. It varies from individual to individual. So your prescription never depends upon that name of the cholera, but it depends upon what patient presents. What Kent says, in such types of cases, I used to first think about the patient, I will give him right remedy, and then I will use the name cholera for the purpose of prevention and saving the rest of the people. After the remedy has been decided upon that clearly covers the symptoms and the patient receives his dose of medicine, the next point is what step is necessary to take in order to protect the people if this is a contagious disease. Diagnosis is something that physician cannot afford to be foolish about. He cannot afford to be a blunderer. He cannot afford to go around calling scarlet fever measles or measles scarlet fever. He must know enough about the general nature of the diseases that after prescription has been made, the patient settled as to that, and the mother wants to know what is the matter with the child to tell her, for in that instant she has perfect right to know. That is a case where family must be protected, where outsiders must be protected. The physician must decide whether it is proper for the child to go to the school or whether it is not proper. So, very clearly he has mentioned these are the reasons for which diagnosis is made. You have to tell the patient's mother if child is there. When she's asking what my child is suffering from, you have to answer the mother. You have to tell what to eat and what not to eat. You have to tell whether he can go to the school or not go to the school. Many things depends upon the diagnosis except the prescription in homeopathy. So here he clearly mentions that in homeopathy, when we deal with the patient, forget the name of the disease. First, find it out what is characteristic thing which patient present. Make a totality. Find it out the totality of that patient and match that totality with the antitype totality from the materia medica and give the remedy. It's not giving a remedy on the basis of name of the disease. And this paragraph clearly defines importance of diagnosis in homeopathy. So importance of diagnosis is as same as which is there with the modern medicine, except in the prescription. Prescription in homeopathy never depends upon naming the disease, or it never depends upon diagnosing the case. I think it's better to stop over here. And tomorrow we might finish this chapter and we'll go ahead with the next chapter. Next chapter will start with directly with the chronic diseases and chronic maladies. So this chapter here, he defines practical aspects of understanding the concept of diagnosis. Few more things which we have to learn in this chapter. So we definitely meet at the same time tomorrow evening. And as time permits, I'm uploading the videos or I'm taking some live sessions without knowing you, but they are directly there in live sessions regarding the materia medica. Those who want to learn, they can go into the live session of the YouTube and all are available. And those who have not attended the seminar, my suggestion is that must go and listen each and everything. That is most practical aspects I have explained in that seminar. So that's all for today. Thank you and good evening.
Thank you. Have a good day.